Okay, man. Thanks everybody for joining me. This is the 5th of 5 that Graham has asked me to react to. Let me change that microphone here. Sorry, guys. It might be hard on y'all's ears. Okay. Anyway, so Graham, this is, like I said, he wants me to react to, this is Rod Stewart singing Mandolin Wind, and he says, my favorite Rod Stewart song. And then he says, I just hope these links work. And yeah, all the links work, Graham. Thank you, buddy. And even though this is not a music video, it's a video with the music, but apparently we're going to get some great pictures here, man. This looks like my home where I grew up in Oklahoma, southeast Oklahoma. It looks like one of the rivers there. And spent a lot of time on those rivers. You know, that's where we swam. No one had a pool, so that's where us kids swam. A place called the Pump Hole, where back in the day log trains used to stop there, and they would, they put out their spout. Let me go over this way. You still can't see. They'd put out their spout and suck up water out of the river at this one area that they had dug out, and we called it the Pump Hole, and that's where us kids would go to swim. And you know, what a great childhood. This was in the 70s. Yeah, all during the 70s, because I left in 78. So that river looked pretty bitchin'. So let me bring it up, y'all. Thanks everybody again. And without further delay, Mandolin Wind with lyrics, it says, by Rod Stewart. Thanks, Graham, and thanks everybody else.
Chose to stay and keep me warm through the darkest nights I've ever known. If the mandolin wind couldn't change a thing, then I know I love you.
Man, if I didn't know better, I'd swear they took these pictures from my home.
Buffalo died in the frozen fields, you know, through the coldest winter in almost 14 years. I couldn't believe you kept us alive. Now I can rest assured knowing that we've seen the worst, and I know I love you. Oh, I never was good with romantic words, so the next few lines come really hard. Don't have much, but what I've got is yours, except of course my steel guitar, 'cause I know you don't play, but I'll teach you one day, because I love you.
Yeah, like I said, man, if I didn't know any better, other than the buffalo, we didn't have any buffalo. Um, I know that there's some ranches that do raise buffalo, but there wasn't any around where I came from. But these pictures, we didn't get that much snow. I mean, we get 2 or 3 days in the winter of snow, but when it snowed, it was so beautiful. But we all got cabin fever. I mean, it was pretty for about 4 hours, and then we knew the roads were going to be jacked up, and we were, I don't know, 70 miles from the nearest grocery store where we lived. So it was a good ways. And if you have issues like whenever it rained real hard, our rivers would flood, and you couldn't go anywhere because you couldn't get past the water would come over the bridges. I should put it that way. And so you were definitely stuck. It was a different way of life than what it is now. I mean, I'm literally a mile from the grocery store, and whether it snows, I can walk to the grocery store. But back then, growing up, and still, my friends that stayed there throughout their life, they still face the same thing. If it snows real hard, they're gonna have a hard time getting to town. The closest town was Broken Bow, Oklahoma, and it's in the southeast corner. There's a Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, but that's up by Tulsa. We lived in just north of Broken Bow. Like I said, it was about 50 miles up a 2-lane road, and then you cut off of that 2-lane road and meander back through this valley. And it was all logging country. That was the only industry going on. Kids growing up, we didn't have a McDonald's. We didn't have any fast food places. We had there was 3 country stores spread out over probably 15 miles, and they had things like bologna and canned goods and things of that nature. But if you wanted to go to the grocery store, you had to go. It was an all-day trip, literally, to go to Broken Bow, and that's where we used to say we're going to town. And our parents did, and our grandparents. And they still live like that today, but there's more traffic because that place where I grew up, that was back in the woods and wonderful way of life. Although if you wanted street lights, you're going to have to go to the city, and that was 4 hours away to Dallas. But to make a long story short, man, these photos look a lot like where I grew up, and it makes me homesick. So I'm going up there in July to my mom and dad's grave. I go up there twice a year. I try to weed and make sure everything's taken care of there, and so I get to go back up into the woods. After I take care of that, then I go through up in the mountains and relive my childhood for a couple of hours before I have to head back to the city and to the big life, I guess.
I recall the night we knelt and prayed, noticing your face was thin and pale. I found it hard to hide my tears. I felt ashamed, I felt I'd let you down. No mandolin wind couldn't change a thing. Couldn't change a thing. No, no.
Yeah, that was awesome. I realized I didn't finish what I was saying about no place to work like McDonald's or whatever. So us boys, we cut firewood for other families. We hauled hay for the ranches, which I'm telling you, it was a back-breaking work, but it was what us teenage boys did. And that's back when there used to be hay bales. Now they're all round bales. I don't know what the heck they do now. That happened after I left for the Marine Corps. So I don't know what the boys would do for that part of the season. There's other things we did for logging. If y'all don't know, when loggers come in and they cut this big, 600 acres, let's say, then what they do is another company will come in behind the loggers after the loggers are cut. Anything that's left, still standing, because they didn't cut most of the hardwood, and I don't know the reasons why, but most of the hardwood was left there, and most of the pine was gone. But what was ever left, the bulldozers would come in and bulldoze that all down. They called it a clear cut. They just cut everything, and then they would bulldoze it all down and put it in these long rows of, this hardwood tree, that hardwood tree, brush, stumps, everything like that. Then they'd hire us teenagers, they hired an adult. The adult would hire us teenagers to go out there and burn all this. So then it was called burning the clear cut, and that would make way for a new planting of pine trees. And then, so I don't know how, maybe a couple months later, it was always cold, so it was always in the wintertime, we'd get another company would come in, and then that adult would hire the teenage boys to now plant these seedlings that were only about, let me see if I can see that. They were only about this tall. We'd plant those seedlings in there, and after about 20 years, they would come back in there and they'd clear cut it, and they would harvest those trees. So it was always, recycling that way, and that was the work us boys had. And after we planted those saplings, deer loved those saplings, so they would come in there and eat those trees. And so what the company that was predominant there, that owned most of that land, was called Weyerhaeuser. So Weyerhaeuser would then hire another contractor, I guess, and that contractor would hire us teenage boys, and we would fence. We'd run miles and miles and miles of barbed wire fence to keep the deer out of these plots of land, so those pine trees could develop, mature, and grow, and then be reharvested again in 20 years. So that's the main reason why I joined the Marine Corps, man. That is hard work. That's the only work that was available where I came from. If you didn't own a ranch, even most of the ranchers, were full-time loggers, and they did the ranching as a supplemental, side hustle, I guess you could say. And but it was a wonderful way of growing up. It was just hard work as teenagers, but we all drove from an early age. A lot of us were driving at 13 and 14 years old up there to haul hay or whatever. And there wasn't one adult that looked at us crazy for doing it. It was just something that we had to do. And that's how we, our parents were poor. They couldn't buy our vehicles for us as teenagers like what happens these days. So if you wanted a car and there was no new cars, then you hauled hay and you cut firewood and you burnt clear cuts and you planted, saplings. You did all that in order to make your little, $60 a month car payment. So there y'all, that's y'all have a little bit of look at how I grew up like you wanted it. All right, so that's going to do it for me, y'all. Until I see you again, I'll catch you on down the road. There's one right behind this. Bye, y'all.